It's Thursday, the 30th of May, 2024. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, we've got 5 massive stories to get through this morning in 5 minutes, so let's get cracking. Story number 1, inflation is no longer falling, suggesting that any cut in interest rates could be a long way off.
Unfortunately, yes. Annual inflation for the 12 months to the end of April stepped up to 3.6% from 3.5% the previous month, according to the Bureau of Statistics. Housing costs and fruit and vegetables rose, the latter due to bad weather. Also, the figure included the annual increase in health insurance premiums. Other items that jumped sharply included postal services, tobacco, and sports participation and services. Perhaps most concerning is that the trimmed mean measure, which the Reserve Bank likes, it takes out some of the more volatile items like fruit and veggies. It ticked up to 4.1%. Now, it's a monthly reading, so we have to read it with some care, but the trend is not the Reserve Bank's friend in this case. Inflation, at best, is flatlining. Headline inflation's entrenched around 3.5%, underlying inflation's around 4%, both well above the central bank's target band, Michael, and that's 2 to 3%.
So, Sean, break it down for us. What does it mean for interest rates?
Those wanting a rate cut this year are disappointed this morning. The Reserve Bank minutes of its last board meeting showed that the central bank discussed lifting rates, and yesterday's number would have added some real spice to that discussion had they come out ahead of that board meeting. As I've mentioned before, the X factor in all this is the stage 3 tax cuts. People will have more take-home pay in a month's time, and it's unclear what they're going to do with it. If they rush out and spend it all rather than paying down debt or saving, it will be inflationary, and that will keep rates higher for longer.
All right, Sean, on to story number 2 now. This is a big one. BHP and Anglo have failed to reach agreement over the terms of a $75 billion takeover offer, with the structure of the deal the sticking point. BHP asked for more time, but Anglo rejected the request, meaning there's no deal for at least 6 months.
Last week, Anglo rejected BHP's third offer, but granted the big Australian another 7 days to negotiate after being pressured by some of its largest shareholders. That deadline was 2 a.m. this morning, and under the UK's put up or shut up laws, BHP had to announce a firm intention to make an offer or say that it didn't intend to make an offer. Hours before the deadline, about 8 hours before the deadline, BHP requested another week. A couple of hours later, Anglo said no. Said BHP hadn't addressed fundamental concerns over the previous week, so it wasn't going to extend that deadline. BHP then had that 5 or 6 hours to make a bid. That didn't happen. The sticking point was BHP's insistence that Anglo sell 2 of its South African assets. The prize in all of this for BHP was supposed to be copper. A successful bid would have made BHP the biggest copper producer in the world. Now BHP must wait 6 months before bidding again, and that leaves the potential for another bidder, someone like Rio Tinto perhaps, to emerge.
Story number 3, Toyota has unveiled plans for a new generation of internal combustion engines, betting on a continued need for older technologies, even as car buyers shift towards electric vehicle makers.
In a rare joint appearance, the heads of Toyota, Mazda and Subaru pledged to continue investing in fuel-based technology, a move that would also benefit hundreds of suppliers struggling with the shift to EVs, according to the FT. Toyota's chief executive, Koji Sato, says that engines are designed to be used along batteries in hybrid vehicles. Toyota's commitment to internal combustion engine technology comes as sales of fully electric cars have slowed. That's pretty much around concerns on costs and insufficient charging networks. That's led to a boom in demand for hybrids. Certainly we've seen that in Australia with the Toyota RAV4. Earlier in the week, Toyota said its new engines should go into production around the time that updated EU emission regulations are due to be phased in from the end of 2026.
Sean, story number 4. Last week we talked about fears of an outbreak of bird flu after a case in a human and one in a chicken was discovered in Australia. Now, in Iowa, in the US, the deadly bird flu was detected in an egg-laying chicken flock, affecting 4.2 million birds.
It's the biggest outbreak since 2022. Now, Iowa is the largest egg producer in the US. About 12% of the country's egg-laying hens are there. In the last large-scale outbreak, more than 5 million birds were affected directly, but it meant the slaughter of tens of millions of birds and a surge in the price of eggs. The virus has now moved to dairy cattle, according to Bloomberg, prompting dairy farmers to seek compensation for milk losses. Of course, Australia is the only continent that hasn't had a mass outbreak of bird flu yet. Very worrying signs, though, when it's happening in other parts of the world. Just need to keep an eye on this one, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last one. Story number 5. Sean, there is a crisis in the world of oranges, with juice prices hitting record highs, driven by bad weather and disease in Brazil, which is the world's largest exporter.
It's so bad, Michael, that manufacturers are looking at using mandarins instead to make orange juice. That's a crisis. Orange juice futures, which allow industry players to hedge against swings in prices, have been rising since the end of 2022 when a hurricane and a cold snap devastated acres of orange groves in Florida. That's the main growing region in the US and the world's second biggest producer. But the rally has really picked up pace this month as the prospect of a dismal harvest in Brazil has panicked the market, according to the Financial Times. Brazil exports 80% of the OJ market, which is different to the orange market. The orange juice market is different. Futures are currently twice the price of a year ago. It's going to become more expensive in the supermarket.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Thursday, the 30th of May, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. Don't forget to check out the new episode of our sister podcast, How Do They Afford That?, which comes out every Wednesday. This week's episode is all about whether money can make you happy. And we've got a bunch of tips for mindful spending. It is a really interesting episode. I'll put a link in today's show notes. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.